Sherlock Holmes solves the riddles of Revelation, the day of Christ or the day of the Lord. Holmes, you have even more questions to respond to. Shall I read aloud what someone wrote? Please do, my friend. Basically, the writer asks, what is the difference between the day of Christ and the day of the Lord? And another writer asks, what does it mean? One day is with the Lord as 1,000 years. And 1,000 years is as one day. They go on to ask, does a day always mean 1,000 years in prophecy? Good questions, Watson. And any good question deserves a satisfactory answer, does it not? Oh, quite so, Holmes. Firstly, Watson, it is important to highlight the fact that the terms the day of Christ and the day of the Lord have two distinct meanings. And for this reason, it is important which Bible version we choose to read. While modern Bible versions may seem easier to read, some publishers have carelessly alternated the day of Christ and the day of the Lord to meet copyright requirements and thereby have omitted God's intended meaning. Please explain what you mean, Holmes. God wants us to understand that the day of Christ is the day of our gathering unto Him, the day of the rapture. Furthermore, God wants us to understand that the day of Christ is also the first day of the 1,000-year day of the Lord, during which time many things are to happen. The day of the Lord is a 1,000-year time span, which begins when the rapture happens and the sun and the moon go dark. And 6 of the 7 vials of God's wrath begin to be poured out, with the battle of Armageddon to follow. Thereafter, for the greater part, the 1,000-year day of the Lord shall be a time of God's blessing, the time when Christ's kingdom shall reign on earth. Then the 1,000-year day of the Lord shall conclude with Satan being released from the bottomless pit, which is soon followed by the battle of Gog and Magog, culminating with the finality of God's wrath, when the 7th vial is poured out into the air and the earth is judged with fire. Oh, I have the relevant passage here in my King James Bible. Please read it to me, Watson. 2 Peter 3:8 reads, "But the day of the Lord will come as a thief in the night, in the which," meaning during which time, Watson? During which time the heavens shall pass away with a great noise, and the elements shall melt with a fervent heat, and the earth also, and the works that are therein shall be burned up. Doesn't that sound like the end of the world, Watson? Holmes, let me see if my understanding is correct. The 1,000-year day of the Lord begins when the rapture happens, when the sun and the moon go dark, and the vials of God's wrath begin to be poured out. Correct so far, Watson. And the 6th vial prepares the way for the battle of Armageddon to follow, with the 7th vial being reserved to be poured out when the earth is judged with fire at the end of the 1,000-year day of the Lord. You're doing well in your understanding, good fellow. And then after the battle of Armageddon, the greater part of the 1,000 years is filled with the millennial reign of Christ's kingdom on earth. Keep going, Watson. And then at the end of the 1,000 years, the finality of God's wrath will come when the 7th vial is poured out into the air and the earth is judged with fire, creating a new heaven atmosphere and a new earth out of the same elements, ready to receive New Jerusalem. Yes, Watson, when the 7th vial is poured out into the air, that's when the heavens are going to roll back like when a scroll is rolled together. And every mountain and island will disappear when the elements of the earth melt with fervent heat, and the seas are going to evaporate. And the result is going to be the creation of a new heaven, meaning a fresh new atmosphere and a new earth out of the same elements. Right, Holmes? Carry on, Watson. And then the New Jerusalem, the heavenly Mount Zion, is going to come down and settle on earth, and God will dwell with his people. You have got the complete picture, Watson.